Hello, Titans, and welcome to As Told by Bold. We appreciate you all for listening in to the previous podcast hosted by the inaugural cohort of Bold Scholars. We are the second cohort of Bold Scholars, and each of us are community college transfer students. In this podcast, we wanted to take the time to share our transfer story, and as we talk about transfer shock, identity, mental health, and family background. These topics have influenced our transfer experience in some shape or form. We hope you enjoy hearing our stories and gaining a better understanding of the experiences of transfer students. Being an ally and support for transfer students can be vital, and many other students have similar experiences. To start off this podcast, Andrea and Karen will share their story in relation to transfer shock.
Hi, my name is Karen. I'm majoring in sociology, and I transferred from West Hills Community College, Lemoore. Here with me is...
I'm Andrea. I'm majoring in communications with an emphasis in public relations. I transferred from Bakersfield College. Today we will be talking about transfer shock. So what is transfer shock?
Good question, Andrea. Transfer shock refers to the tendency of transfer students to experience a temporary dip in their GPA during their first and/or second semester at the new institution. Now, the reason why we chose to talk about transfer shock is because both of us have firsthand experience with transfer shock. I went from being an A student at community college to getting C's my very first semester. Part of this is also that I wasn't in the right major. I was a business major when I first transferred, and I saw how the classes didn't align with my values, and so I had to work through that as well. And then I changed my major, and I saw the difference of going from my first semester here at Cal State Fullerton as being a C student to going back to being that A student that I was.
That's actually funny that you mentioned that, Karen. I actually experienced the same. I didn't change my major, but at community college, I was an A student. And when I transferred here, my first semester was horrible and I got all C's. It was just a big shock of classroom sizes, I believe. In my community college, the biggest class that I was in was 40 students versus here I was in a lecture hall where there was over 100 students, and I just felt like I was just another body in that lecture hall, and I wasn't really getting the attention from professors or the information that I really needed in order to really achieve what I needed to achieve. Which brings me to my next point in my transfer story, which is moving away from home. I'm originally from a small town north of Bakersfield by the name of McFarland. It's a really, really small town where the population, I believe, is like under 15,000 people. So everyone knows each other. My community college, there was people that I knew from high school. So it was like I felt like I knew people and I felt like I knew where to get help. But coming to Cal State Fullerton, it was just a new environment. It's a new city. I just didn't know who to go to or where to go for certain resources here on campus. And even the city, I'm still trying to learn it. I still kind of get lost. Thank God for GPS, But it was hard, and it's still kind of hard at times just being away from home, knowing that my family is 2 hours away from here and that I'm not with them all the time. I miss out on things, so it's a little hard at times.
Thank you for sharing, Andrea. I had a really similar experience as well. I come from a small town called Lemoore, and it's south of Fresno. So for me, it was really hard because coming to Cal State Fullerton, my family was very far away from me, and they were just a phone call away, but it wasn't the same as, going to bed and waking up and they're there and I can talk to them, or that I can go over to one of my family members' house and just, talk about my day. It was a very different experience because all the people who were supporting me and who I knew I could count on were very far away from me. And it was really hard coming to a new school and having to find that new support system who would help me through school, who would help me through any hardships that I was really going through. This also led me to isolate myself. I wasn't connected to my community here at Cal State Fullerton. I kept everything to myself because I didn't want to worry others about the things that I was going through. But as I went through my first semester, I realized that I needed to inform those who were close to me about what was going on so that they could also understand what I was going through. This led to me having to create a new support system while I was here at Cal State Fullerton, and it was a lot of trial and error. I tried joining clubs. I approached different faculty. But it was really just trying to find the people who I'm most connected with that I could relate. And really a big support system that has been for me is some of the Bolt Scholars. Now, Andrea, would you like to elaborate on this from your point of view?
I actually had a similar experience when it came to social involvement here on campus. Moving away from home, I completely lost my support system. My support system back home were my parents, my family, my professors, and just moving here and not knowing anyone, it was a little hard to, just go to with your everyday, little things, to random people that, I had just met, a few weeks prior to the semester or something. And I actually did join a club here on campus. I joined PRSSA, and it did help me meet people here on campus. But the thing was that I still kind of isolated myself. I would go to the events and everything that they were put up, but I wasn't really networking. I was just there to see what it was about. I would come home and I literally wouldn't go out of my room. I didn't want to be with anyone. I just wanted to be alone, and that just really affected the way my academics were, and just not having that support system here who just takes you out, even on campus to the library or something, to check up on you. It was a little hard. I wasn't used to that. I was used to just coming home to my family and them always being happy, and here I would come home to an empty apartment, which was really cold and just depressing altogether. So finding that support system was not easy. It just, personally, I was just in the wrong environment. So just not being able to have someone here around me to tell them about my day or just little things that happen here on campus and relate to it was a little hard. Eventually, my second semester, I just got more involved with people in my club, and it was just easier knowing some faces in classes, and it was fun. Eventually, I met this girl that was I was trying to be your friend first semester, but it just seemed that you weren't interested. You was isolated, and I really was. And part of it was because I didn't know how to approach people. I didn't know what my support system would be, or there was just other things that tied into that first semester. One thing would be that I had a financial hardship. I didn't have a job, and just not having an income really impacted my life. I was used to just, spending $20 here and there, and I just had to put myself in a budget, and it was a little hard. But eventually everything just got better, and things just started coming into place. I got to meet other people. I ended up getting a job, and I found my support system here on campus. So just know that if you're going through something hard, it's for a reason, and whatever you decide to do with what's happening, either learn from it or not, it's just the way that your life will continue. So I ended up learning my lesson that I need to be more social, and that actually impacted my grades as well. I ended up coming back to being an A student. I'm still trying to recover from that first semester, GPA wise, but everything gets better.
I know you mentioned financial hardships, Andrea. I actually went through the same thing. Well, my first semester, I decided I wanted to not work because I wanted to focus more on my schooling, because I knew it was a lot different. Classes were a lot different at a 4-year than they are at a community college. And so I felt like I wanted to be more focused on school, but I didn't realize how much that had an impact on me as well, going from being a student and working at the time to just being a student. It actually did have a big impact on myself, because I did have to start worrying about what I was spending my money on and really be strategic on those things. So it did impact me. And I know a lot of times, I know financial need is a topic not many people like to touch upon, but it's true and it's real, and it has a way of affecting us. But I was persistent and I was like, okay, I want to find a job now. So I went out and I researched online, what jobs on campus were hiring. And eventually I did get my job. My very first job here on campus was actually working at the bookstore. And it was a very great experience. And had I not been persistent, had I not been on the lookout for those campus jobs, and had I not connected with people, I also wouldn't have had that opportunity to find that job. So really, if financial hardships is a thing that also affects you, it's just finding a way to ease that. And a campus job for me was what helped the most. Now, what I would like to share with you additionally is how I have overcome transfer shock. So one of the new things is approaching academics in a new way. This meant that I had to adjust my study habits because the ones that I had created at community college needed to be tailored now that I was at the 4-year, because there was a lot more reading required of me here, and also just classes are structured very differently. So it took a lot of planning, and that's something I've continued on, is having a planner for myself and really taking the time to really look at those syllabus and plan out all those deadlines and just go to professors' office hours, connect with the students in my class, and whenever I need help, I reach out to administrators, friends, family, and really take myself out of that mindset of isolating myself. That's actually one thing you want to avoid. You don't want to isolate yourself. In those times, you actually want to come out the most. Because I know for me, my first semester was really, really hard because I isolated myself. But when I got myself out of that isolation for my second semester, and also, I was in the wrong major as well, but being in the right major and taking myself out of isolation, it helped and improved my academics. I was enjoying my life a lot more. And overall, it was just a big improvement in my grades. Now, Andrea, I would like to know, how have you overcome transfer shock?
That's an interesting question, Karen. I actually started to find other places besides my apartment where I could study, and eventually I found my environment where I could really focus and get things done. And spring semester, it was a library in the 3rd floor. There I would go in between classes and after classes as well to get things done. And sometimes even nap. Since it was easier just to go there and just get things done, that's what I did. This semester, I am actually going to the resource centers. I don't have a specific one. They're in the front, or I just go around and see whichever one has the most open space. I'm actually still trying to overcome my transfer shock, and it's just a process. I don't think I would say I'm over it, because I'm not. I'm still trying to find new support systems, and I already have one in place, but just add to it, because it's always nice to have, a group of people who actually care about you and help you out through your problems, or just listen to you and celebrate your accomplishments. It's just nice to, just see how my first semester I was in a really bad place, but now I'm starting little by little to improve my grades. I actually got a job. I made friends here on campus. I just found a new environment altogether that I feel happy with. And hopefully everyone who has gone through transfer shock has found that place or that support system that really helps them out. Lastly, we would like to leave you with 2 of our favorite quotes, which are, "Great things never come from comfort zones."
And if it feels scary, if you feel you're not ready, it's probably what you need to be doing.
Hello, everyone. This is Stephanie.
Hi, this is Brittany.
Hello, this is Mariana.
The topic for this podcast is about the stigma placed on transfer students who have mental health disorders and students who have disabilities.
As mentioned before, my name is Stephanie Lazama. My major is Human Services with a concentration in mental health with a minor in psychology. I transferred from Santa Ana Community College, and I'm going to share my experience as a transfer student suffering from mental health. Mental health affects among 52% of college students, according to the APA website. That is crazy. I am a Latina woman raised with traditional values, and mental health was never a relevant topic in my household, especially not in a Latino household. Mental health affects young people of color at similar rate as young white adults. However, they are less likely to be diagnosed or seek mental health services. This is largely due to the stigma and cultural mistrust of mental health professionals who lack cultural competence.
I know in my family it was also a really common misconception that mental health was more about willpower than an actual disorder or some sort of disability. So it's really sad to see that others have the same belief.
Does your family have a similar belief?
In my experience, being a Latina comes with a lot of expectations. Some put on by my family, some cultural, and some others from my perception from the outside. In my family, we did not acknowledge mental illness. There were many women who were locas, but the word crazy wasn't spoken about.
Can you share how it all started?
I was about 20 years old. I was diagnosed by a psychiatrist, and it was a really hard time in my life. I was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety, and my whole world was flipped upside down. My family doesn't believe in mental illness, doesn't believe in depression, and I was alone and I was scared. I couldn't understand why I would go to class and cry. I couldn't understand why I would cry myself to sleep. I couldn't understand why I lost so much weight and I couldn't get out of bed. I felt like a complete mess and I didn't understand why. I went to the doctors and I got labs and everything physically was fine, but I knew I wasn't okay. In the beginning, I was in denial because the people closest to me told me that I was okay, and I wasn't okay, but I was said that I was being dramatic. I finally got to the point where I was suicidal and I had to reach out to my mom. That's when I finally hit the lowest point in my college/life. I didn't have the desire to move forward in life anymore. I remember I would sit in my bed and I would think of ways how I wanted to die. And in school, I didn't feel like anyone really understood what I was going through. Somehow I managed to keep my grades up and do well. Because coming from the family I come from, being a transfer student, your expectations are set much higher. Being from a Latino household, you don't really have the option to fail. Like, we don't have those luxuries because our parents gave up so much for us to be in school. So me telling my family that I was sick, they didn't understand.
Well, thank you for sharing all that stuff, and I really appreciate how open you've been. So I did want to ask, how did your mom react when you finally told her about everything you had gone through? Was she supportive, or was she just in denial about everything that you had said?
My mom didn't believe me at first. She just thought that I needed to exercise and eat better and have positive thinking. So she just thought I was stressed out till I got to the point where my boyfriend at the time couldn't get me out of bed. And my mom panicked and I got to see a therapist right away. And then I think a week later, I went to go see a psychiatrist. But before all that, my family tried everything. And if you come from a Hispanic household, you know all of those natural remedies. I tried all the herbs. I tried I got B12 shots every day. I tried every herbal medicine. I went to every church. I got every prayer that can be prayed over me. It was hard because my family didn't believe me and they thought something horrible had to happen to me for me to be sick. Despite my hesitation, I started getting help, and the hardest part was starting medication. My family did not agree with it, but it was honestly what saved my life. If I didn't have taken medication, I know I wouldn't be here right now. And even though I had to go against my family's beliefs, it saved my life. And this is where I felt guilty for a long time and I felt ashamed. But you don't educate a certain culture, they don't really know about mental illness, or they have this strong stigma on it that it can be misled. Just imagine how many people in our school don't have the support system that I had. I'm lucky enough, my major, I learned about CAPS and I learned about getting help and I learned about medication and reaching out. With using all the resources that were available to me, like a therapist, my family, my friends, I was able to regain my life again. And from all of this, I've learned that I will not be silent about who I am because I am not my mental illness. I decided that I wouldn't be defined as crazy. Being labeled with mental illness makes me feel insecure about it at times, especially being medically diagnosed. I felt less than. I felt scared to tell anyone. But now that I'm on the other side of it, I believe we have to paint a new picture of mental illness and talk about it more so we as students can get the help we need, but also other people can become less ignorant and more sensitive to the mental health community.
Hi, my name's Brittany Brennan. I transferred from Santa Ana College. I'm a child and adolescent development major with a concentration in elementary school setting. So one of the first problems I had transferring from the community college was all the stress. I wasn't used to not being at home. I really liked being with my parents and the comfort that they brought to me. And then also when I was at community college, I would only work, 2 days a week or so. But once I transferred here, I got a job that was 5 days a week. And that just really took a lot of the time away from my schoolwork. And of course, my assignments as an upper division student got much larger. There would be some assignments that were so overwhelming that I didn't even want to start them. And looking back, I did speak to a therapist about this, and she told me it's actually because I didn't know, but I am a perfectionist. So perfectionism is a personality trait characterized by an individual striving for flawlessness and setting high performance standards, accompanied by critical self-evaluations and concerns regarding others' evaluations. But basically, I tried to be perfect in my academics, which, of course, no one can do.
Thank you, Brittany, for sharing. I just wanted to ask you, how was it for you to seek help? Was your family supportive?
It wasn't difficult for me to seek help per se. I guess getting a counseling appointment here at Fullerton can be difficult at times just because there is a long list and you have to wait a while. But once I was able to, the therapist was super welcoming and she was very supportive. She validated everything that I was feeling. My family, I'd say they were supportive of me academically, but truthfully, I never told them that I had gone to see a therapist because I knew what they thought of that. My mom, when I talked to her about that in the past, that I wanted to see someone back in high school, she thought, oh no, I don't want you to see some psychologist or whatever because they're just going to make you crazy. They put ideas in your head. Is my mom's idea. And then my dad, his response was, well, Freud isn't God, so he doesn't know how to take care of you. So, that being said, my family had a very negative view of psychology and mental health.
Thank you, Brittany, for explaining that. What helped you keep going when you didn't want to turn in assignments?
I think it's the same as Stephanie had said. One of the major things that kept me going is knowing all the sacrifices that my parents had made for me. They even, put me in private schooling when we really couldn't afford it, truthfully, but they just thought schooling was such a priority. And it was made clear to me from the time I was in kindergarten that I was expected to be successful academically, and that this was a major value in my family. So just knowing how important it was to them and how much they had sacrificed in order for me to get into higher education, it wasn't really an option for me to just stop going, to stop turning in assignments and things like that. So as I mentioned earlier, when I was in high school, I had this interest in talking to someone because sometimes I would have strange feelings, or specifically, I would have this almost heart attack feeling in my chest where I would have trouble breathing and my heart rate would start beating very rapidly and I'd feel very uncomfortable. I'd start crying uncontrollably. It actually happened in class before when I was in high school, and it was very traumatic for me. I didn't know what it was. It wasn't until I was actually a junior in college, once I had transferred here, and I went to CAPS, that I was told that I had anxiety. I guess part of me was relieved to know that I didn't just have a problem, it wasn't something physical. Of course, that also meant that it didn't have a simple resolution either, but it made me feel better, someone actually validating what I was feeling and knowing that I wasn't the only one that had this. The person I spoke with told me something else called Adult Children of Alcoholics. So basically, I told her about how in my family there was problems with alcohol, and because of that, it also is what led to me being such a perfectionist and feeling that everything around me essentially was my fault, that I had to take care of other people or else things would fall apart, and just would lead to a lot of my problems with control. So all in all, I'd say it was a great decision for me to go to CAPS, even though in the moment I didn't know why I was going. I was just thinking, oh, this is someone who I could ask for advice about getting assignments done and not procrastinating because everything was my fault, right? I just didn't understand why I was procrastinating. But there really was more to it. So I'm grateful for the person that I did speak to, and I would encourage everyone to go and see someone, even if they don't know what exactly is the problem, if they're just looking for advice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for sharing your experience with mental health disorders. I really appreciate that. As mentioned before, my name is Mariana Ocampo. I'm a psychology major with a concentration on counseling. I transferred from Coastline Community College. I actually had a really great community college experience. I had a great GPA, which led me getting accepted to my top choices in colleges, and I was involved in so many things as well. I didn't struggle as much in community college, but when I transferred here, it was a whole different boat. So when I transferred here, it was a difficult time for me. I wasn't studying as much as I should have, but I still managed to do okay with my classes. I had some personal issues that were happening, but I refused to see a psychologist. I was really busy. I had class. Right after class, I had to go to work in a job that I didn't really like. It wasn't until the end of the semester where I first received my first D in a class and had 3 C's for my other classes.
How was it like for you receiving your first D when you came from community college with such good grades?
Receiving my first D, I felt like it was a massive disappointment. It really sucked, in my opinion, and it was very hard. For a long time, I didn't tell my dad I received that D. I was so scared to bring him disappointment, which is why I hid it from him.
I know I spoke about my family having very high expectations for me. Was it kind of the same thing with you, or why was it specifically that you really didn't want your dad to know about the poor grade that you received?
It was more of him being disappointed in me because I am the first one in my family to go to a university, especially to a 4-year college. And me feeling that I got a D in one of my classes, I felt like I disappointed him. I was a disappointment in my family. And in general, I just felt I should have tried harder. And in reality, I could have, but it was just the semester that was happening. It was very hard for me to concentrate. Because of that D, I basically failed a class and I was placed on academic probation. Well, academic probation means that I had to do better the second semester or I would get disqualified from the university.
Sorry, Mariana, could you just explain to us what disqualified means exactly?
So academic disqualified means that you are no longer a student at California State University, Fullerton.
That must have been a very scary experience for you. How did you feel maybe getting disqualified, correct?
Yes, very scary for me. It was a huge eye-opening for me because how was it that I was going to go home and tell my dad, yes, I am the first one going to university, but I may be the first one that might be disqualified from university. And that was literally the hardest thing I had to do to my father. And in order not to get disqualified, I had to get a 2.0 or better. And along of getting probation, I wasn't allowed to do other things like have more than 4 classes, as well as there were some clubs that I wanted to join, but my GPA didn't meet that requirement. But one thing that was really good about it was that I was able to go to my professor's office hours, which helped me so much more because I learned about my professors and they were actually really cool people if you meet your professors. So I encourage you all to meet them if you can. And as I said before, I refused to go talk to a therapist. And, finally I went on January 2018. And that's when my therapist told me that I had depression with anxiety. But because of my probation, my anxiety was really worse. It became really, really worse. So it was hard for me. I had to go see my therapist twice a month. It was really, really bad. So with academic probation and with my anxiety, it was a huge, it was horrible for me for that second semester for the spring 2018. And I felt like I was doing everything I should be doing. I went to my professor's office hours. I was studying more than 15 hours a week. I got a job that I really liked. I thought that I was doing everything, but that wasn't the case. In the last 3 weeks of the semester, I had 3 Ds and a really low C. And that's meant, as I said before, I had to have a 2.0 or better. There was a night where I told my father that I was going to get disqualified. And after that, I had to tell my sister, who plays a second mom to me. And it was also hard. The hardest part for me was telling my mentor from Coastline. She's the one that helped me get into Cal State Fullerton. She's the one that wrote a letter of recommendation to me to bold and everything. And she was the only person who refused to accept the fact that I was going to get disqualified. Going off that, she always thought there was something different from me. When I was working with her, she saw a lot of spelling errors on my essays. The way I speak was a lot of speech impairment, a lot of grammar issues, and I also had a lot of difficulty to count numbers, and I confused the letters. For example, if someone tells me the letter W, I have to say the alphabet to know what letter comes next. And it's very hard for me to tell time on a clock because I have to use the 5, 10, 15. So when I take a break from work, I have to either take a break at 9:15 to make sure I have a 15-minute break. And because of all this, I got diagnosed with dyslexia.
So, Mariana, when you were first diagnosed with dyslexia, did you ever think back to what if I would have been diagnosed with this when I was back in elementary school? What other opportunities may I have had? What other supports could I have had? How would things have ended up differently?
Yeah, I think for a long time in my life, I always thought that I was really slow. I thought that I wasn't smart enough for the other kids because I just thought that I was just slow. For example, I would see my best friend from elementary. She would have like the best grades and everything, and I would work twice as hard, but I didn't get any like results back. So I think if I got diagnosed at an earlier age, it would have helped me so much better. Like my self-esteem with my academic, and from the diagnosis, I actually received a lot of help from DSS, which is Disability Student Services, and since then I have been using their services, and because of their services, that have actually saved me from the last semester. I dropped a class. I was taking 4 classes, and I dropped 1 class, and I still had to worry about 3 other classes. However, I managed to get a B- and 2 C's, which not only got me out of probation, but it saved me from getting disqualified. So my advice is don't judge us without knowing the full story. I don't suffer from dyslexia. I live with it and I work with it. I suffer from the ignorance of people who think they know what I can and cannot do.
Thank you for listening to our stories. Once again, I'm Stephanie.
I'm Mariana.
I'm Brittany, and we hope that you can get the help you need without feeling judged. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Clarissa. I'm a transfer student from Fullerton College, and I'm majoring in human services.
And my name is Stacy. I transferred from Orange Coast College, and my major is in communications with a focus in public relations. Today, we are talking about identity as a transfer student, and how we are going to talk about identity for this case is how one identifies themselves or sees themselves.
Some specific identities that I wanted to share today was my identity of being Chicana as well as being a first-generation student.
And for me, it's definitely what I've noticed most is my ethnicity as well as my age, and then also, I would say, just being a woman.
And how has your ethnicity and being a woman shaped your transfer experience?
It's really helped me to see some of the limitations that I have as a minority in society. But it also, as being a transfer student and taking the classes that I'm taking, I'm learning a lot about what I need to do to overcome some of those challenges. I know that being a woman and being the type of person that I am, which is very forward-thinking, and I definitely like to make moves and waves sometimes and things that I do. And some people don't like that, especially from a woman. I have to really acknowledge that my identity definitely does impact my experience being in a college setting, for sure. But knowing what they are helps me navigate the water so that I can overcome some of those challenges. What about you?
For me, being a first-generation student has definitely impacted my transfer experience because it's kind of hard. When I first got to community college, I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I knew I wanted to be here. I knew this is the right step to take, but I didn't know how far I can come. And looking back now with how far I have come, it's kind of crazy, and I definitely have to thank all those supports that were there for me. And looking back now, I am thankful for those because I wouldn't have gone through my transfer experience and embrace my identity as a first-generation student had it not been for those support groups who have helped me learn how to embrace that. And as far as being Chicana, it's not normally seen in my family household for people to go to school, but I have seen a lot of strife through obstacles that my family has faced in terms of addiction or incarceration, young pregnancy, and things like that. It's further embraced my identity as coming from my family background and being a Chicana and being a first-generation student. Stacey, you had mentioned some of your obstacles that you face with your ethnicity and being a woman. Can you kind of talk about how you overcame those obstacles?
Sure. So being a woman, I have to overcome being shy and not speaking up for myself and being more assertive with what I feel and what my opinion is and what I have to say, especially now that I'm in this space. That's not something that is taught, unfortunately, but I've definitely had to overcome that just by speaking up in class. And, if I state an opinion, I stand by my opinion, but I'm also willing to learn and listen to others. And so that's been interesting. And then sometimes when I am in those situations, it's not, just my ethnicity, but also being a woman, those two, I feel like being a Black woman is very difficult personally. I just feel like there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of stereotypes, and it can really cast a very challenging light on me where it puts opinions for other people on me when it's not necessarily true. And so one way that I've learned to overcome any of negative stereotypes is to just always be true and authentic to who I am and just stand by my word. And I feel like I also have to be humble enough to listen to others when they have an opinion and take that into consideration, but it definitely doesn't undermine my ability to think for myself and to speak up for what I believe is right and true. What about you?
I definitely agree with that experience. It started with having those support groups kind of tell me where my place is, for me to realize it for myself that I do belong here. Because when I transferred, I faced this thing that's called the imposter syndrome, which is where you don't really acknowledge your worth, even though you are more than capable and you are qualified. It's just this thing that I personally had with me where I already transferred, I got the scholarship, and I still struggled knowing my place and knowing that I belonged here. When the moment I got chosen for the scholarship, I was telling myself they should have chose someone else. I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable. And this is very common for many first generation students. And I had to find it within myself to embrace my background, embrace who I am, and look at all the places in education that I'm around and know that I do belong here, because I'm a voice that some people may have not heard yet. And it takes a lot to embrace that identity, because although many people do identify as first generation, it's very unique for everyone. And it's kind of just for myself knowing what that means to me. And I still will have my struggles seeking to go to grad school, and I still have that constant battle with myself that I'm not going to get in, or that bachelor's degree is just enough for me. Even though I want more, it's a fear that I'm not capable of having more, because I am still first generation and those are still obstacles that I'm going to constantly face. But it's kind of a battle within myself to continue to embrace where I come from and know that I'll be able to go far.
Yeah, I definitely share that experience too, especially the imposter syndrome. Like, just showing up, just being a college student, just being in the class, sometimes it's like, am I even supposed to be here? I don't even know what this word means. What is this professor talking about? Why is this person to the left of me keep raising their hand? Do I not know as much as I should know? Like, it's constant, really just questioning whether or not I'm supposed to have a seat at the table. And so it definitely takes a lot of courage to keep moving forward. And then on top of that, like you mentioned, having a scholarship too, for sure. When I first received notice about it, it was okay, well, did they choose the right person? Am I supposed to be here? Can I really offer these? Really would like to, mindset of being fearful. Fear of failing, I think, is the biggest thing, is a fear of failure. And the most interesting thing, though, is that fear of failure is easy. For me, personally, I could just easily not do anything just for the simple fact that I have fear. But I've learned that being courageous and moving forward, regardless, even though I have that fear, it's better for me to fail, not necessarily fail, but fail and just keep trying, because I really don't feel like I truly, truly fail until I just stop trying. I think that's the reality, is just showing up, being present, getting my work done, conversating with my professors, talking to other students that identify similar to me and even different than me, because they can also offer a different perspective. But definitely, it takes a lot, and I'm not entirely sure if the imposter syndrome ever really goes away as I'm in school, because my mom did a lot of college classes through non-traditional means. So for me, I feel like I am also a first generation college student because trekking the waters of finding out what does admissions do and how do I sign up for my classes and what is a FAFSA, all of those things. Definitely I had to figure out on my own. Sometimes I messed up, sometimes I missed deadlines, sometimes I made mistakes, but it never stopped me from taking that next step forward. And I've learned that moving, even though I have fear, is probably the best thing I can do for myself because it really has opened up a lot of doors for me to just learn and grow and acknowledge who I am and then learn more about my identity and in terms of how I see myself, but also like as an individual and as a human being, how I see myself moving in the world, that I'm able to make choices and regardless of this fear of failing or fear of being inadequate. And I really think that it's actually comforting to know that it's not just me that's experiencing this, that we're not alone, really.
And that's the thing is that we both have this scholarship, or we could both, get the degree. Like most students will get the degree, but it doesn't mean the whole time there wasn't fear, there wasn't this imposter syndrome, there wasn't this struggle trying to embrace your identity in these places. And I feel that that's part of why it's so important to talk about this stuff, because I'm pretty sure it took you a long time to embrace who you are and to kind of know where that comes from.
It was shocking.
Yeah. And it's same for me, like being first generation, I was kind of like, oh, well, great. Like I'm the only one who's going to not know anything. I'm the only one who's going to have these struggles. But as I open my heart and open my mind up to different places and different people, I learned that I'm not the only one going through any of this stuff. And I kind of like always try to remain humble, because I know no matter how far I get, I'll always remember that fear, and because I'm still gonna have it, and it's part of doing it and doing it afraid, like not being afraid to embrace who you are as a woman, as a person of color, as a minority, and as someone who didn't know what they were doing but managed to make it. My little brother and sisters, my older brother and sisters, my niece and nephew, and the little one I have at home, and I'm like, I have to do it for them, and I have to do it for myself, because we need more people like us to be at the table. We need more people like us to succeed, so that way others know they could do it too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Having different types of people that identify differently at the table, I 100% agree with that, especially when it comes to making decisions for things that impact all of us. On top of being someone that identifies as mixed, because I come from two different cultures, so that's an interesting part to me too, because sometimes I feel alone in that space, and like I identify as African American in one space, but then like my Latina side is very hard to like bring it into the room, and like vice versa. So it's like finding this beautiful balance, I guess. I've really tried to take the initiative to learn about both. What does it mean to be Puerto Rican, and what does it mean to be African American, and how can I bring both of those girls into the room so that it is authentically me? It's definitely a challenge, but like you said, Clarissa, like having the support is probably one of the biggest things to have, especially like going through the process of learning about identity or even just acknowledging our identity. Meanwhile, like trying to, go to class, do our homework, study, do our chapter readings, like there's so much to do on top of this personal journey, it seems, alongside this journey of academics, that is definitely something that requires attention, because I really don't think that I would have ever really looked deeper at my identity, how I see myself, understanding how all of this plays out. All of it came to fruition, and understanding who I am, the history of it, knowing information about it, it really, really helps. But I feel like at the end of the day, the things that I have no control for my identity, I acknowledge the challenges that I have being in society and trying to move about in the world to get things done and to make a difference for, people like me that are women, people like me who identify as queer, people like me who identify as mixed, people like me who, just identify themselves as themselves, who want to be authentic to themselves, just as a human being that they are. That support has been vital, absolutely vital to the success of me finishing and getting my degree.
And we've kind of both touched on it already, but how do you stay authentic in your college environment? I try to just remember to embrace where I come from in terms of just how my family was brought up. We weren't brought up with education.
And so how would you say that you remain authentic to your identity, like how you see yourself in the college environment?
I think I learned how to do a lot of that through my workspace as well as the support that I had at my community college since I'm very connected with them. So the way that I remain authentic is to kind of bring it back to my family and my culture, and I remind myself that I have something smart to bring. I have great ideas. I have the experience to back it up. And it's just knowing how to articulate that in a way that makes me presentable and makes me me, but in a way where I'm remaining intelligent to myself, but I'm not falling into the majority culture because I have my own culture. I have my own identity. And it's just learning how to navigate that is how I try to remain authentic to my identities.
Every person has like a skill that they could bring to the table. And I think that when we stop looking at what other people are doing and looking at what people are capable of, it's easy to say, oh, look at them. They're doing X, Y, and Z so great. And I'm not doing that great thing, so therefore I'm not great. That's a really far jump, I think. So I think this pretty much wraps up our podcast on identities.
Yeah, if anything, just remember to self-reflect and remember who you are and remain who you are and to be true to yourself, because it will be challenging, it will be hard, but just hold on to where you come from, hold on to the obstacles that you have faced and embrace the obstacles to come and just find your way to navigate through that and always remain authentic to yourself.
Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Lean Felix. I'm from Mount San Antonio College, and I'm currently majoring in accounting.
Hey, my name is Sherry Salama. I'm from Irvine Valley College, and I'm majoring in civil engineering.
This discussion will be about our family backgrounds and how I actually was identified as a model minority.
And how I had the same experience, except that I didn't have to move to a different country. It was a norm in my country.
So I actually grew up here in America, specifically Southern California, and I grew up in an Asian household. So right off the bat, I was given the stigma to be a model minority, and this means that I am expected to achieve socioeconomic success, which therefore removes the necessity to acknowledge the work that I put in to be successful because it is expected of me. It also relieves the responsibility to provide support to the people that identify as model minorities. So my good work was dismissed a lot because I was expected to do that. And when I didn't get the grade that they expected me to get, they made a really big deal about it. And so in a sense, my success was really demeaned and it became something of a normal occurrence rather than something valued. And when we actually struggle, in my case, I was seen as lesser because I should have been succeeding.
As for me, I grew up in Egypt. In my culture, not going to college is not really an option. Everyone is expected to earn their bachelor's degree by the time they're 22. I was expected to go into the medical field, following my dad's footsteps, since he is a physician. I was always pushed to do better. Getting good grades were not enough to be successful. If you are not reaching your best, it's not good enough. I had to strive for higher grades. While I naturally wanted to strive for my personal best, my family expectations for perfection made things harder rather than motivating. It sometimes felt like my own achievements were overlooked because even though these achievements were my own, they were not the ones that were expected of me. And in that way, I can relate to Celine's experience.
Yeah, so going off of that, in terms of my family, I fit into that model minority status because I had to meet their various expectations. To kind of preface that, these expectations were set because they moved here from a foreign country, knowing that there were opportunities for me here to have a better life than they had in their home country. So there was a lot of excessive pressure. I faced a lot of stereotypes of needing to excel in the arts, go into the medical field like Sherry, and succeed in academia and be good at sports all at the same time. However, being a model minority affected me personally. Because of all that pressure put on me, I thought I had to put that pressure on myself. So it was a lot of unnecessary pressure and expectations, not only from the people around me, but myself. I had the insecurity of non-fulfillment, and it was very irrational. And in a sense, it led me to denying my culture in order to fit in. In the end, it also led to me feeling misunderstood and unheard because no one was able to understand why all of this pressure was put on me, or at least took the time to understand. And when I was voicing my struggles and my concerns, I felt unheard because I was Asian and it was expected of me to do that. And so how that translated into my higher education experience, I was actually looked down for not going straight to university. I actually went to junior college first. I was further looked down upon for not pursuing the medical field. I entered into the business field. Therefore, I was expected to fail. I was no longer seen as the perfect model minority because I strayed away from the path that was given to me. And now that I'm at Cal State Fullerton, it made me overly conscious and aware of my actions to not be labeled as being too Asian. And the extra effort was made to not get lost in the crowd of people similar to me and stand out among those who are not in my shoes.
It's interesting, Celine, that you experienced that. In my family, school was top priority. As kids, me and my sisters were taught that getting a college degree is everything. It was already hard world out there for women. So we were told that if we were to lose everything, we would still have our degree to rely on, to get back up, and to build our way back to where we want to go. I moved to California after finishing my IGCSE degree, which is an equivalent for a high school degree, and it's given through Cambridge. I was expected to go into the medical field, as I said before, and I couldn't find my passion really, even though I grew up surrounded by biology books. I was always good at math and had a passion for drawing and art in general, so it became clear to me that I wanted to pursue an engineering degree, and I discovered my love for architecture after taking many classes that overlapped between engineering and architecture. And this is what have gotten me to where I am today. My major isn't really what society expects of women, and it's definitely not what my parents imagined me doing, but they understood my love for it, and doing what I love helped when some classes are challenging or have a bigger load of work than others. Remembering my goal helps getting through those times.
I love how you mentioned that you are where you're at today because of those classes and how you really found your love and passion for it. In terms of where I am at today, I'm glad that I took the path I chose because I'm constantly learning and I'm constantly challenged by all the concepts and theories thrown at me, even though I don't want them thrown at me. But in a sense, I still continue to be a model minority without following this expected path. Like, I still overstudy. I still try to be at the top at the class. But even though I'm put under this label, I have made it my own by being unconventional, by steering away from the medical field and really sticking with business. And I grew past the standard of not having support. Instead, I put it upon myself to seek that support as anyone else should. Find your resources, find the people that will be there for you. Because for me, the only person that you need to please is yourself.
I completely agree with Celine. You definitely have to follow your passion and do what you love. And to me, it is sad how many women decide not to pursue STEM majors just because they're told that you're not smart enough or that math is just hard. My advice is just try out some math classes while in high school. Maybe take an AP class and see how you like it. Usually it's on the same level of how it would be in college. So you would get a good idea of where you're at with math, and maybe you will decide to pursue a STEM major, hopefully.
So Sherry, you've come so far, and I just really wanted to know if there was a role model that inspired you to where you are right now, and what did they do for you?
Strong women throughout history inspire me with how far we've came along. I feel that with persistence and passion, I can do anything because of them. What about you, Celine?
So I didn't fully realize who my number one role model was until she passed away. And that was my mom. She passed away from cancer. And she was the most inspirational person that I could ever have known because she always put others before herself. She always made sure that everyone around her had what they needed and more. And that's inspired me to be where I am right now because she is constantly motivating me to be the best that I can be while serving my community in any way I can, which is why when that model minority label is put on me, it's not ever a negative aspect to me anymore. It's more of me fulfilling my want to be as impactful as my mother.
Thank you for sharing that. What would you say to your younger self?
Something that I would say to my younger self is to open up more. I think the reason why I felt so misunderstood and unheard is because I never really talked about it in the first place because it was so looked down upon to express your emotions. And I would tell my younger self that it's okay because there will be people that are there to understand you and support you, and everything will be okay in the end. What about you?
For me, what I would say to my younger self is that don't be afraid to dream. Sometimes you can dream big and feel that you may not be able to make that dream come true. But if you are really passionate about it, you will get there. Okay, so I have a question for you. When did you first realize that you should stand up for yourself against those norms?
The first time I realized I needed to stand up for myself is when the expectations put on me became unreasonable. Like I mentioned, I was expected to excel in all things art, sports, academia, and it came down to me realizing, well, I'm not passionate about the arts as other people are, so I shouldn't be forced to pursue it. And at that point, that's when I chose sports and academia over arts. And that was at the age of 8 when I quit cheerleading without my mother knowing. What about you?
For me, I realized that when I figured that I would not be happy with me waking up every morning and going to work if it wasn't a career that I wanted. Yes, it is good to please other people, but don't let it be at the expense of your happiness. Especially when it has to do with career. It's like that's your achievement. That's where you see yourself in 10 years.
So, knowing all of this now, talking about this, our different experiences somehow colliding together, do you wish you were raised differently?
There are some parts that I definitely would keep from my upbringing. I definitely believe that education should be prioritized, but also to make sure that other aspects of your life is balanced too. It can cause some stress if you're a young person and you feel that many expectations are being put on you, because at younger age, you try to please your parents. A lot of times you validate your success through them as a kid. So just remember to have fun and don't take everything in life too seriously. What about you, Celine? Do you wish you were raised differently?
I really want to echo some of the things that you said, how because of the way that my parents raised me to prioritize my education, I realized the difference in the way that other people were brought up. And I'm glad that education was a priority to me and put upon me because I get to learn something new every day. And I think that's something that not everyone experiences, at least on an academic level. So I'm glad that I'm constantly challenged with my schooling and with my job and the importance of really being involved in everything. I think I can also reemphasize just remembering to have fun, and I think that's something that I would change because I think right now I'm always putting my work first before myself, and that's something I'm learning to do right now is allowing myself my own time to relax, reflect, and really understand how I'm feeling before jumping into a new project, a new assignment.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to share this with anyone who would benefit from it. If you can relate to any of the stories that we shared, please share it below in the comment section.